Hello guys, welcome to another video. Today I'm going to be showing you how this LEGO Racing Simulator is built and how I used all of the pieces in the table you see in a couple of seconds to make this racing simulator. So let's do it. So here, you see me, I'm taking bricks, just smashing them together, and also there's a gear there, so that's part of the steering to help with a gear ratio that is very important. I'll talk about that later. So I'm just building up the base right now with yellow and black bricks, just to make sure, I just keep a color scheme in this build. You see the rubber band on the bottom right, that's for the self-centering steering, and the gear there on the bottom right, the bottom left, is where that helps me with the gear ratio. So the gear ratio is, so the steering would be hooked up to the large gear on the left in this image, and that gear has a slight gear ratio to that other gear increase. So then the joystick on the controller, when it moves back and forth, will move more, just a little bit more than I turn the steering wheel. So right now I'm building up the steering wheel with axles and these cool angle pieces that you can use to make a lot of different angles, and I'm adding some standard slash Lego Technic pieces to make a center, trying to find a center in the middle of the steering wheel, so it'll be more of like a wheel and not like a hexagon. So I'm almost done there, and I'm going to add this special piece on the middle. So that piece has it's a regular piece, but it has holes on the inside. So there's a middle hole that I can go through, so I can get the axle on there on the steering wheel, and that will just be able to turn the gear and then turn the joystick. So there it goes on there, and as you can see, it turns the thing in the front, which touches the joystick and makes it turn also. And you can see the gear rack working there, which I was trying to explain in the last video, but I just wouldn't want to take it apart to show you that. But here it is. So I built that on top with some Lego plates. Wanted to add some special details on there, just to give it more of a simulator vibe. And the back part that you're seeing right now is really helpful, because if I didn't have that big piece on the back, then the joystick thing that moves it back and forth, it wouldn't be able to stay upright. It would probably fall out multiple times, and I just couldn't deal with that anymore. So I added that big piece in the back so it won't move. I'm adding the sticks right now on it, so that would be what touches the joystick on either side. So now I'm building up the shifter and handbrake and nitrous base. So it's getting built up. And by the way, this video is in reverse, if you're wondering, because all the pieces are like floating to my hand. So this is why some of the pieces are really large, and also because those random pieces are there because they were underneath before this build, because it just got trapped underneath the controller. But if you're wondering, it is in reverse. So I'm almost done building up the base for the handbrake and the shifter and the nitrous. So it's about 90% done. Here I'm adding an axle, so the handbrake and the shifter can both go down to the bottom section of this build because they're up high in the beginning, up about where the steering wheel is, and then I have to get an axle all the way down there. So this axle here is for the shifter, so that axle is going to go to a worm gear like that. I did put this through the video, skip this part through the video because it is pretty simple. All I had to do is make a little slide compartment on the inside, and then that will just, so there's a string connected to a beam, and that pulls and pushes with the gear, so it turns the gear left and right, and then the gear is connected to a gear rack that moves the stick back and forth, that pushes on the controller, toggles to make it go forward and backward, or gas and reverse. So there's the worm gear configuration under there, and also the thing that holds the controller. And that custom piece, because that piece needs to push on the shifter buttons on the controller. So that base is for the handbrake. So there's a gear that goes on the outside of that pushes on the handbrake button on the controller. So that's what I'm just building up right now. The main lesson of this build is you're gonna need a lot of differentials, and axles to get one input, like the handbrake or the shifter, down to an output, which is the controller, to push a button. See all the axles and diffs that I need to get down to the shifter custom piece. So all I had to do was just find a place for a differential to go and get that axle all the way down there. It is pretty hard sometimes, especially when you're doing it like with no instructions or no planning at all, which was what I was doing, but you can get used to it eventually, and I eventually got there. So I just built the handbrake thing that pushes on the square button, which is emergency brake in the game, and right now I'm building up another differential, like I was saying before, to go up to the handbrake. So right there, what I just built was one side with a Technic piece that the axle would go through for the shifter, and that red gear you see would connect to the yellow gear in the bottom right. That is going to be the shifter. So that piece I just built right there was part of a diff. So it's going to go in there on top of that other gear. So right there, I'm building up the Technic base, and there's that yellow gear going in there. So in between those, that upside down yellow F, that's where the shifter would go. So there's the nitrous right there, and the yellow gear is now in place. And also there's a Technic piece connected to the axle, which is going to be connected to the shifter. That beam that's hanging there, so that's the nitrous. So I'm adding a little piece in the bottom to make it easier to hit the X button on the controller, which is nitrous in the game. And on the end, I'm adding a button so it can be easier to press and it'll look nicer. So I'm finally getting done with the shifter here, so I just added a little pin so I can attach a longer beam on top so I can grab onto it. So here goes the shifter here. Just a black shifter, and finally adding the last touch on the top. 2 1x1 studs, and that's the complete shifter right there. So it has multiple diffs that goes all the way down to that custom piece you see that's shaped like a W but really thick. Here I'm finally starting to build up the handbrake, which is going to be in red. If you can see in the bottom, all the way at the bottom, there is a yellow axle sticking out. There's going to be a chain on a gear connected to that will connect to the handbrake. As you can see, the handbrake is starting to get a self-righting system, because you can see the piece the piece that has the rubber band on it now being connected, because there isn't much friction on the gears, because there's only one or two diffs that are in this system. But with this shifter, there's torque that needs to be made to press those buttons more than just the square button. And there's also 4 differentials to cause friction. So the rubber band would have to be incredibly strong to make this thing self-right. And I just have a rubber band that's strong laying around, so only for the handbrake it's going to be self-righting. Just a couple last finishing touches on this handbrake. Just some smooth yellow tiles going down right here. So now I'm finally about to finish the handbrake. So I'm adding some pins, and it's going to be in red. There's the gear, and there's the other gear. And now I'm finally adding the chain that I told you about on there. And now all these red pieces are going to go combine together to make a red handbrake. Now for the finishing touch. Last but not least, of course, we have a stabilizer for the controller, just to keep it down when I'm using the gas pedals. And you can see the worm gear inside, and it's going to be built. Thanks for watching. Watch another video and subscribe, maybe like, and I'll see you in the next one.